How many Mr. Pickles will it get? Let's see if this cabinet has what it takes.
Video Game Vegas.
He's so cute.
Friends, Video Game Vegas. And this is my review of the Arcade1Up Marvel Superheroes Limited Edition Arcade Cabinet. I base my arcade cabinet reviews on 10 categories, which you'll find detailed in the text below. For each positive in a category, or more positive than negative in a category, I'll score it a Mr. Pickle. The more Mr. Pickles it gets, of course, the better. Based upon the total score and my overall thoughts, I'll recommend if you should get it, vet it, or in other words, put it through its paces in person before you buy, or forget it. A couple of disclaimers before I get into my review. All my product reviews are based solely upon the item or items I receive. Some may get the same product and have no issues. Some may have more issues than I did. And maybe I get no issues at all, my hope for any product. Or maybe a majority of the specific product performs or presents differently than what I got. But when it comes down to it, what I get is what I review. I don't acquiesce to excuses like, I must have gotten a bad one, or a good one, or ruminate shipping issues if I had it shipped, though I may note something. But plainly put, I'm an advocate for good quality with a strong emphasis towards quality control. And if a company wants their product seen favorably, then they need to make this a paramount part of their philosophy and put it to action, so what every customer receives is an acceptable, if not preferred, exceptional experience every time. Some may think it unfair not to put a more significant emphasis on the law of averages, and I appreciate that opinion. But my reviews are meant to tell my experience on exactly what I got, good or bad. Second, the footage presented in my videos of arcade cabinets I review or showcase may contain updated parts, decorations, software, or other bits and bobs not included in a standard purchase. Please make sure to check advertised listings or reach out to retailers or companies to confirm complete contents in box. Now let's get to it. Hype and the fear of missing out. Two very powerful motivators when it comes to wanting something. And when it came to Arcade1Up's Marvel Superheroes Limited Edition Arcade Cabinet, both were in full effect. After the disaster I experienced with my first Arcade1Up purchase, the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 cabinet, I passed up on many of their offerings. I knew I wanted to support Arcade1Up's concept, but I didn't want to do it at the expense of quality. But when they announced their Marvel Superheroes cabinet line, there was something different afoot. With their Marvel Superheroes cabinet, they would offer a variant with increased quality, upgraded buttons and sticks, and also a light-up marquee. And although the light-up marquee for me was just a bonus, the upgraded controls and what looked to be a much improved monitor really excited me, as these were cut corners on their Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 cabinet. Now this variant, which they dubbed the Limited Edition, would be at a higher price point at $399, $100 more than their standard edition in that line. But I never mind paying more for quality if the price to value is legitimate, which sans its small game library was to me at the time. Now I swore to myself after the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 fiasco that I wouldn't buy another Arcade1Up product unless I heard favorable things beforehand by people who actually got to experience the product in person, preferably in the form of full reviews. But when Arcade1Up announced that this quality version would be limited to 8,000 units, the fear of missing out kicked in, and against my better judgment, I ended up pre-ordering it. And what made it worse, the SKU was only available to purchase directly through Arcade1Up, who were also charging additional shipping, which if I recall right, cost me around an extra $50 or so. But please don't take that as gospel, as I couldn't find my original receipt to confirm. Also, buying directly from Arcade1Up meant that I might not be able to return it, or at least make it harder to return. I was taking a huge risk, but I thought for sure this time they wouldn't let me down. Was this the case? Here's the skinny. The look of the cabinet. I've always been attracted to the artwork on the Marvel Superheroes commercial arcade cabinet. It's always been one of my favorites, and Arcade1Up replicated it beautifully. The light-up marquee was also amazing, and though not a necessity for me, something I really appreciated having. The rest of the presentation marred, unfortunately. Though the main side panel art was in great shape, the riser had some glaring, though small, damaged areas. I paid a premium for this product and was left disappointed by the lack of care. It should also be noted, this cabinet was double boxed, and both boxes were in fantastic condition. Everything was also packed very well, so I don't think the damage was caused by shipping, rather by poor quality control during manufacturing, though that's still speculation on my part. No matter the case, this was unacceptable for a brand new product. I paid full price, not a scratch and dent discount. Cabinet structure and assembly. Arcade1Up's brilliant design of the 3/4 scale size cabinet is here, and though some may not like the lighter materials used, I absolutely do, as the whole structure is amazingly sturdy and well built. This cabinet also has the same great two-piece construction, a main cabinet and a separate riser, making it taller, while also making it easier to move and situate. I just wish putting it together wasn't so frustrating. Though I didn't have much trouble with the riser, the main cabinet itself was a nightmare, and another part I shouldn't have had to install, but we'll talk about that later. This is the first Arcade1Up I put together myself, and it took me over 4 hours. The last side panel install was an exercise in pure anger, and Arcade1Up's wooden dowel assembly method is for the birds. I hope they can fix this in a future design. Physical controls. Though I'm not a huge fan of the feel of Sanwa controls, especially in their too short of a throw buttons, I prefer hap controls. These are still more than acceptable, and a welcome upgrade over what Arcade1Up uses on their standard cabinets. What is not acceptable, though, are the horrible square gates on the sticks. Who in the heck thought this was a good idea? I've never played on square gates in the arcades, so that killed Arcade1Up's real feel claim right there. I immediately ordered some third-party circle gates and fixed Arcade1Up's mistake right away. And if I feel I have to replace anything in one of my review categories, it loses a Mr. Pickle. Picture quality. Well, when the cabinet finally worked, I'll get to that shortly. The picture quality was fantastic. This blew away the monitor on the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 and made all the graphics pop. This is how you present these wonderful games. Great job, Arcade1Up. Sound. The sound was also fantastic when the cabinet finally worked, still getting to that. I love the fact that it has multiple levels of volume, 15 in fact, over the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1's 2 levels, well, 3 if you count off. I don't think I would quite describe it as the Q sound I experienced in the arcades back in the day, but it's still great. Games and gameplay. The games, when the cabinet finally worked, I promise I'm getting to that, played just as I remember from the arcade. Amazing. This cabinet comes with Marvel Superheroes, X-Men Children of the Atom, and The Punisher. I've put so many quarters into these machines in the arcade, and I hoped beyond hope that because they were such heavy hitters for me, that it would be enough for me to justify owning this cabinet. But alas, what a waste of potential. Now it should be known that I've never had a problem with a cabinet releasing with a small number of games, if those games required specialized controls designed to only play those few specific games. But if we're talking a cabinet that comes with controls compatible to play most of the Capcom arcade library and play it correctly, and with Arcade1Up already producing a cabinet during that time with 12 included games, and in that same price range, then a paltry 3 titles just doesn't cut it. And yes, licensing is a factor, I won't deny that. But because this cabinet has been out for years as of the writing of this review, and we've seen Arcade1Up's business model in action, I think it has more to do with them releasing cabinets with a bare minimum number of games they feel they can get away with, or the companies they work with feel they can get away with, just to release newer versions soon after with a few more games added in. Good for business, maybe, but not very consumer forward. I, for one, find it kinda crappy. After owning the Marvel Superheroes cabinet for a short time, I began to realize that 3 games were just not enough for me, especially for the price point and the real estate it took up. In my head, I feel it should have at least, at bare minimum, the amount of games found on their largest library cabinet at the time, the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 with 12 games. And if they really wanted to make an exceptional gesture, why not trump their largest library by offering 20 or more games? But sticking with the 12-game concept, here's how I think this Marvel Superheroes cabinet could have gotten into acceptable territory for me. In addition to the 3 games already on the cabinet, let's make it easy on Arcade1Up and start by adding all the licensed Capcom games they had during this cabinet's release. If I'm remembering right, I don't think their first Capcom head-to-head was out yet. Let's add in Final Fight, Strider, Ghosts and Goblins, 1944 The Loop Master, Street Fighter II Championship Edition, Super Street Fighter II, and Super Street Fighter II Turbo. Then to get it up to 12 games, let's add in Darkstalkers 3 and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. 2 games I previously requested Arcade1Up consider and are currently out on other cabinets today. And if you happen to be one of those who stands firmly in the belief that Marvel vs. Capcom could never have released on this cabinet at the time due to the lack of technology, the price of upgrading the technology, or something to do with impossible licensing deals, then forget that one and just replace it with one of your favorite plausible Capcom titles here. Now I can come up with even better Capcom collections all day long, but if Arcade1Up could have at least added these titles to the lineup, I would have gladly praised them in this category and felt satisfied with my purchase. Customer support. Before I finally reveal the main issue I had with this cabinet, let's just say I had another go-around with Arcade1Up's horrible customer support system. They finally had a built-in ticketing system, but after submitting one, I heard nothing back. I ended up directly contacting the Arcade1Up representatives who helped me with my Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 cabinet, and though I appreciated their continued courteous and professional manner, it still took them over a month and a half to get me the replacement part I needed. Speaking of which, other annoyances beyond what I've already discussed? Yes. So after the arduous task of putting the cabinet together, I turn it on and, well, the marquee turned on, but nothing else. No amazing sights and sounds of the games, only the light from this newfangled light-up marquee. If I just bought the cabinet as a cool Marvel Superheroes lamp, that would be okay, but I bought it to play games. So I did all the normal troubleshooting I do, reseated every wire and such, made sure the power supply functioned and was plugged in firm, but I couldn't get anything to work beyond the light-up marquee. That's when I came across an on and off switch on the PCB itself, something that wasn't on my Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 PCB. I powered off the cabinet and flipped the PCB switch in the opposite direction. I can't remember where it started, on or off, and turned on the machine. Still nothing but the marquee. I turned the cabinet off again, flicked the PCB switch back to its original position, and decided to begrudgingly reach out to Arcade1Up customer support. But before I did, something in me made me want to turn on the cabinet again. I did, and this time, it came to life. The machine was working. That familiar Arcade1Up splash animation came up, and its exuberant sound effects blasted through the speakers. I immediately got down to some serious play, reliving all my fond memories of these great games. Relief washed over me as each game started up and played just as expected. Well, except for the annoying feeling of the square gates on the sticks I mentioned before. After playing a bunch, I eventually shut down the cabinet for the day, thankful I wasn't going to have to contact Arcade1Up support. The next day, I turned the cabinet back on, ready to continue my superhero beatdowns, only to have the machine stop functioning again, with only the light-up marquee turning on. No sound from the speakers, no picture from the monitor, no arcade fun time. I turned off the cabinet and flicked the PCB switch to its second position, then turned it back to its original. I turned the cabinet back on, but still only the marquee illuminated. I was getting frustrated now. I turned off the cabinet and flicked the PCB switch just to the second position and turned on the cabinet. Marquee light only. Upset now, I turned off the machine and started flicking the PCB switch back and forth about 10 times, finally resting in its original position. I turned the cabinet back on, and everything started working again. I played a few rounds of Marvel Superheroes, but felt I needed to test everything again. After losing to the Juggernaut once more, I powered down the cabinet and turned it back on. Only the marquee illuminated. Ugh. I turned off the cabinet and repeatedly flicked the PCB switch several times as I did before and turned the cabinet on. Only the marquee illuminated. Desperation set in as I turned off the machine, did the multiple PCB flick switch method one more time, making sure it rested in its original position, and turned on the machine. Everything worked again. At this point, I thought there might be an electrical short or something like that in my PCB. And as I mentioned, I ended up contacting Arcade1Up customer support, who concurred with my assessment and said they would send me out a replacement PCB. It would take them over a month and a half to get me one, and although I'm thankful the new PCB fixed the issue, though it sucked to install, I still found it absolutely unacceptable for a brand new product to come with these kind of issues. Is the cabinet fun? There's no denying, I've had a blast with this cabinet. It deserves every bit of its Mr. Pickle here. Value for price. Given all the issues I had with this cabinet, and its laughably underwhelming number of games, Arcade1Up's Marvel Superheroes Limited Edition Arcade Cabinet isn't worth the $3.99 asking price. Not even the included Certificate of Authenticity makes it come close. Even with the hardware upgrades of the limited edition, I wouldn't recommend paying more than $1.99 for it brand new, and that's only if you get free shipping and are okay with the possible cosmetic damages and don't mind rolling the dice on the possibility of getting a faulty PCB. So adding up the tally of all the categories, how many Mr. Pickles does Arcade1Up's Marvel Superheroes Limited Edition Arcade Cabinet get? 3 Mr. Pickles out of 10. Forget it. This is beyond frustrating for me, folks. I really wanted to like this machine. Though I can't recommend purchasing it, I don't want anyone to think I outright hate it. I love the 3 games on the cabinet and enjoy playing them. It's just one of those machines that, if something better came along, it would probably be the first to go. One good thing that did come from this purchase was its strengthening of my resolve. Though I'm not perfect by any means, I did take real stock into my purchasing habits, redoubling my efforts to wait for cabinets to get a majority of positive feedback with no blockers important to me before buying, or should I say keeping, as was the case with Arcade1Up's Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet, a yarn I might spin for you someday. For those who would like to see more of what this cabinet looks like, I'm paying it forward and leaving a link to a video I've enjoyed showcasing it. And with that, safe travels everyone. And remember, you always have a right to your opinion, but only I have a right to mine. Until next time, stay wiggly, my friends.